Dr. Brandy Faulkner. Good morning.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. So, Election Day was yesterday. Lots to talk about. But first, just what were you expecting coming into a race with so much national attention?
Well, all eyes were certainly on Virginia. I think a lot of people were interested in how things would play out here, which in some ways led to a lot of excitement across the state as people tried to figure out who they wanted to vote for, as candidates engaged in debates, as people thought about their personal situations and what they wanted to either stay the same or to change.
And so, now, of course, these statewide races, the races for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, those were all thought to be very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But as results come in, many organizations called them very early in the evening. Spanberger won the governor's race by double digits. Hoshby won the lieutenant governor's race by double digits. Jones was in a very tight contest with Attorney General Miyares, but he won by about 6 points. So, what do you think happened? Why were Democratic victories in these races so large?
Well, I know that we look at the numbers and conclude that these were wide margins, but they really aren't when you consider statewide races. I think that some people thought that the margins would be smaller than they actually turned out to be, and they thought that they would be consistent across the governor's race and the lieutenant governor's race and then the attorney general's race. And then, of course, just last month, we got a national news story that put the attorney general's race in a little bit more of a contentious category. And people were unsure at that point what would actually happen, how much or how little would it affect that particular race. And so I think what you saw was a lot of political party solidarity, and that is what made the difference.
And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of national attention on these races. Traditionally, Virginia elections have been seen as sort of a referendum of sorts on the federal administration and power. How much of a referendum on the actions of the current Trump administration would you say that these elections were?
Yeah, this was a clear referendum, and it's not just because of the three executive offices, but we also have to consider the fact that Democrats flipped 13 House districts. So, I mean, that is a clear indication that people would like to see something different coming out of Washington and try to, through their vote in the state, produce what they want to see. So there is no doubt that played a huge part in what happened last night. And when you look at the fact that Virginia has so many federal employees, that makes sense. What is happening at the federal government level certainly affects Virginia a lot. So that shouldn't have come as a surprise that this would be indicative of how people were internalizing Washington politics.
You've mentioned that the Democrats flipped 13 House of Delegates seats, including the district we're in now, the 41st, with Lily Franklin defeating Chris Obenshane. There's been a lot of enthusiasm and excitement on the Democratic side here. On just this past Saturday, there was a Get Out the Vote rally. Delegate Dan Helmer came, Maryland Governor Wes Moore came, and if I'm not mistaken, at least 3 times as many college voters here turned out on campus, at least, when compared to 2023. What do you think that says about the way that young people, especially, are engaging with politics in this day and age?
I think what happened in 2023 in this district, the margin being so exceptionally small, just 183 votes, right? It really made people step back and say, wow, my vote really matters. When we're looking at margins that are that small, it really brings home for people the idea that what I do, it matters, it counts. And that can be a huge motivator. Now, eyes were on this district not just because of what happened in 23, but also because it would be a huge determiner of what things would look like in Richmond. And we also saw a lot of engagement from both of the candidates. So many volunteers were out pushing young people to vote. And I think that did make a difference. The engagement really did matter. And we're seeing higher numbers because of that.
So, once Spanberger, Hashmi, and Jones are sworn in, once this next General Assembly is seated, Democrats will have undivided control of state government for the first time since 2020, I believe. What kind of things can Virginians expect to see coming out of Richmond over the next 2 years?
I think we can think about it in two ways, right? So there are some policies that Democrats have been pushing through the General Assembly for the past few years that have actually made it through, but then have been vetoed by the governor. And I think a lot of attention is going to be given to those policies, right? But the other part of that is there, is always a political wish list. Here are all the things that we think we could have done over the years, but didn't get the opportunity to do because of how the General Assembly looked in terms of its partisanship. So I think you'll see some things coming forward from that list as well. I think when we hit January, things are going to be a little bit chaotic. Because Virginia does not exist in isolation, and we do have to think about the effects of federal legislation on the state. And we have heard certainly lots of discussion about some of those issues during the government shutdown. People are concerned. What's going to happen to folks who can't eat? What about the people who can't afford medical care? Those discussions are going to continue, but the question will be, what will the General Assembly do about that? So that's at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and I think that will make this first General Assembly fundamentally different from what we'll see next General Assembly, where they'll have more of an opportunity to say, here's our agenda. Here are some things that we want to move forward with beyond just putting out the right now fires. So I think this session will be a little bit limited in terms of expectations. But I think that a lot of the Democrat agenda for subsequent sessions will be achieved.
Well, Dr. Brandy Faulkner, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.